How much cash do you actually need to buy a home? So, yes, we are tonight talking about one of the biggest questions people have when they start to think about buying a home. How much money do you actually need to get started? A lot of people assume the number is much higher than it actually is, and misunderstanding keeps people from knowing or even exploring home ownership. So, the biggest myth here is 20% down. One of the most common myths in real estate is that you need a 20% down payment to buy a home. All right. There are so many people that I talk to that believe that this is true. Today, there are several loan programs that allow for much smaller down payments. The key is understanding what those options actually look like. Some common down payment ranges. So, down payments can vary depending on the loan program. Some programs allow as little as 3% down, others 3.5%. Some buyers choose to put down 5, 10% or more. Each option, for example, I have a friend that was going through the mortgage process and ultimately really confused about putting that 20% down because that's a big lump sum when you look at it. When you purchase a home, when you get into the new home, you need stuff. You need furniture. You need, sometimes you need or want to paint, upgrade here and there, add little things. It could be a refrigerator, a stove. You possibly may need other appliances like a washer, a dryer, all these little things, well, big things that you don't really think about. The most important thing is actually getting the home, of course. However, we want to be proactive in our decision making. So when putting that money down, you have to think, what else am I going to incur? What other types of expenses am I going to incur with this? Because more than often, these are items that might come up. I mean, sometimes they don't, which is great. And you may have some of these items, which is also a great thing. So it just depends on everybody's situation. And maybe putting 10 or 15% and paying a little bit of the PMI each month in the payment might help rather than putting all your eggs in one basket and, coming out to where you have a little bit, only a little bit of wiggle room with cash to actually make your place yours. So it just depends. Um, right. FHA. So one example is FHA financing, which allows for a minimum down of 3.5%. Now, this is on a primary home. I just want to make that clear. Now, every program, every product type is obviously going to look different from lender to lender, from broker to broker when you talk to whomever guides you through these decisions. Of course, this is educational only. I do want to stress that based on of my years of expertise. However, 3.5%, as long as it's a primary home, this program is often used by first-time home buyers or just buyers that want that lower upfront cost. All right, but like any loan program, it does come with specific guidelines as well. Conventional loans. And I'm sure you've heard of all these terms, so I'm going to clear the air. All right. Conventional loans. Some conventional loan programs also allow for down payments as low as 3% or 5%. Also, it does have to do with occupancy as well. If you have owned a home, typically, from what I've seen, if you haven't owned a home or had a title of a home in your name within the past 3 years, you're usually considered a first-time home buyer again. So just want to clear that up. That may help. These programs depend on factors like credit profile, income and your overall financial picture, of course. So again, the down payment can vary just depending on the borrower or borrowers if there are more than one. What you have available to you. So always talking to somebody is going to be your first and foremost best option. Closing costs. Okay. Another super important factor here in the home buying process is closing costs. Closing costs are separate from the down payment and include things like lender fees, title work, and setting up the escrow account, which is your taxes and your insurance. When buyers plan financially, they should think about both down payment and closing costs. That is what is going to be due when you sign, when you purchase. You're responsible for your down payment and closing costs. Okay. Obviously, there's different things that are out there in place to help with these types of items. Like you can have grants, you can have certain credits or things like that, just depending on what your lender or your broker offers to you. When buyers plan financially, they should think about down payment and closing costs. You want to get those two items um, popped in your head there before buying a home. Okay, so let's look at a example here. Quick example. If somebody is purchasing a home for 350,000 and putting 3% down, the down payment would be about 10,500. Seeing the numbers this way can ultimately make the process feel more concrete, and I will get into this a little bit more later with my calculator. In some ways that buyers reduce cash needed. Some cases, buyers may be able to reduce the upfront cash they need, like seller concessions, as I mentioned, those lender credits. So lenders are also able to offer certain things too, credits here and there, and assistance programs, like I had mentioned, grants, things like that. Down payment is only one piece of the mortgage approval process. Lenders also look at factors like income, your credit profile, your overall debt levels when evaluating an application. I always say loans are like puzzles. There's pieces everywhere, and we always want to make sure that those pieces fit and work out in your favor. So things like that, debt to income ratio is going to be an important factor because at the end of the day, the lenders want to know and feel confident that you're going to be able to make this payment comfortably. So that is something you want to look at. Also, want to look at your budgeting yourself as well. So those things that do not show up on the credit report, things like daycare, um, groceries, your gas, it could be your cell phone bill. If you have any other expenses, or you're like me, I have a lot of expenses. Just being an entrepreneur when it comes to my technology, my internet, and my services that I use. So think about all these things. Adding your budget is very important, and looking at it is going to help because what we see as lenders and our underwriters see is just what is on that credit report. So, auto loans, student loans, personal loans, we can see credit cards. So, we evaluate based on that. And you want to do your due diligence and just make sure that you are super comfortable with this because sometimes if you're not, you do not want to sign or get into a situation that, is going to put you in a spot where you're always going to be in a struggle bus month to month. So that is not what you want to do. You want to be comfortable with the amount that you're looking at. And we'll go into that too. So, all right. So, my goal with these short workshops is simply to help people understand how the numbers work behind home ownership. When people understand the process, they can approach these decisions much more confidently. Personally, I feel like these decisions should take a long time, you know, maybe 3 to 6 months. It's definitely something that you're thinking about. You want to know the logistics and you'll want to know exactly what you're getting into. It's going to help you in the long run, especially when you talk to the lender, when you talk to the broker. It's going to help you understand what means what. Okay, I understand this. So that way you can make a really good decision at the end of the day, an informed decision, and just having that knowledge is very helpful. If you ever want help understanding your own scenario, I'm always happy to help walk through these numbers. I have a website. You can absolutely check in with me, and that's fine. No pressure, just clarity. That's all what I'm about. Okay. So, and it's late at night and you just want the information simply. So, yeah, feel free to go check out my tools. I wanted to keep this one short today. Hope you have a great rest of your week here, okay? Bye. Thank you for taking the time this evening.